Well, China has come up with a list of 14 things that we've done wrong in Australia. When I heard about this earlier today, I said, I bet number 13 is, asking for an inquiry into the origins of the coronavirus. And much to my astonishment, or not to my astonishment, yes, number 13 is indeed tucked right down there at the bottom, as if, oh, yes, that just happens to be an incidental thing. Australia's call for an inquiry into the origins of the coronavirus, which is clearly what this is all about. James, you've written about this, the list of 14. I guess it's the China's takeaway menu on what we've done wrong, and I guess we can choose whatever number we want from the menu and talk about it. Fire away.
Well, that's right. I mean, look, it may not be tasty, but actually it is kind of amusing that the Chinese, or the Chinese Communist Party, we should say, has taken this blustering attitude towards China, and they are very, very cross with us indeed. And, there's all these warnings that China is angry and don't make China an enemy because we'll be your enemy. And it's blustering bully boy tactics. And when you look at the list, it's everything from not letting them build our 5G communications infrastructure to, as you said before, asking, little questions like, hey, what happened exactly with that coronavirus, and why did you do things like, say, lockdown travel in mainland China while letting everybody from China fly around the world and infect the globe with it, But really what it comes down to is they're angry at our think tanks, they're angry at our media, they're angry at our government, they're angry that we have not decided to simply let them suborn our parliament, shut down criticism of China in the press, and that we still talk about the Enlightenment, Greece and Rome, rather than the shining light of Xi Jinping thought.
Rita, they also draw attention. Apparently, we're very naughty because we've been criticising China's actions on Hong Kong and Taiwan. At least they're now recognising that we can use the word Taiwan. Wasn't it a couple of years ago, even Qantas refused to acknowledge that big island there off China even existed. Now, at least we're in trouble for supporting Taiwan. I'm pleased to say we are. And we're in trouble for supporting Hong Kong. Rita, what do you make of the list?
Well, I'm quite impressed by how honest they're being with this list, because they said, we don't like you going to the human rights commissions and complaining about us locking up people. Well, they didn't mention the locking up people in concentration camps, but they did say Australia interfering or meddling in China's affairs by trying to involve human rights organisations in what is essentially ethnic genocide, which is happening in China right now in 2020. And they did mention Taiwan and the fact that Australia wants Taiwan to join the World Health Organization, which China has blocked. And to their eternal shame, the World Health Organization has kowtowed to China. Now, we know Taiwan has been the model country in the world in dealing with this COVID crisis. They've got a population similar to Australia. Have only had a handful of deaths, a death rate well lower than what we've got in Australia, and never shutting down the economy and society. They manage this crisis by having a really strict, targeted approach instead of just locking down healthy people and shutting down businesses entirely. They do have restrictions like mass gatherings and the like, but nothing like what we saw in Australia and particularly Victoria. So the world can learn a great deal from Taiwan. The World Health Organization could learn a great deal from Taiwan, but because of China, it ain't happening. And China also accused us of prejudice, and it just does not want us to have any sort of national sovereignty or principles that we act upon. If anything is in any way offensive to them, they expect us to take a knee. And I guess for too long we've turned a blind eye to their antics. We have taken a knee in so many ways, and I think this is the time to stand up. Now, with Donald Trump exiting the White House, I think it's going to be far more difficult to stand up to China going forward. But at this point in time, the Treasurer this week was very conciliatory. He's doing everything he can to rebuild that relationship without compromising our values. But we can't go into this new relationship from a position of weakness. We've got to say our national sovereignty is paramount, and we're not going to give in for short-term financial gain.
I think it would amuse many people in China and Hong Kong and particularly in the Uyghur community. Point 12 that they say is they're very upset because of, quote, an early dawn raid, a search on a Chinese journalist for no particular reason whatsoever. That's our greatest crime. There might be several people locked up in Chinese jails and re-education camps who might think that if only we could just have a quick dawn search and have it over and done with. James, what do you think?
Well, yeah, and I mean, you know, let's talk about this list here and think this kind of works both ways, guys. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why Australia should be annoyed with the Chinese Communist Party. You know, you mentioned people in prison like Yang Hengjun, the UTS professor, Australian citizen, who's been locked in a Chinese dungeon for 2 years now on some sort of trumped-up charge of espionage or whatever they're calling it this week, and many other Australian citizens, too, who've fallen afoul of the law, who are locked up with absolutely no due process like anything we would imagine. The attacks on our beef, barley, wine, foreign student markets, coal and imports, all sorts of things like this. There was a Perth study out of the University of Perth that said this is costing us, I think, something like $65 billion per year. So that's a big hit in our economy. But I think the important thing that we also need to understand is that China is simply acting like a bully because they are not in a position of strength. They have great dreams of taking over the Pacific, great dreams of taking over the world. And right now, I think Xi Jinping is looking at the state of his own country, his own economy, his own demographics, and thinking this dream is actually slipping away, and they've got to do more and more and more to be more and more obnoxious. You know, they've got a big demographic time bomb with an aging population. They've got a huge debt time bomb that is waiting to explode because nobody knows exactly how much debt is out there in the Chinese economy. And so they're coming at this from a position of weakness. And because they're doing that, you know, let's not forget, it's not just Australia that's in the frame here. Lots of other countries are also copying the same treatment, which means that China has no friends. And China has, you know, in all the international opinion polls now, its personal image has just declined rapidly. Rita.
No, well, you just saw at the UN, I think about 6 weeks ago, when there was a vote on what's happening in Hong Kong. China's got plenty of friends at the UN,
exactly.
And in fact, just about every single one of them. Well, of course not, but it doesn't matter. They don't care about the people. They don't even care about their own people in China, let alone the citizens of the world. And the people, the countries that back China, almost all of them have signed up to the Belt and Road Initiative. So this powerful initiative that is really to increase China's political influence across the world is already having an impact. I mean, I've seen the Victorian government sign up to it. Morrison government stepped in and said, we're not having any of that, we're tearing up that agreement. But this country is aggressive and they use their economic might to bully smaller nations. Yes, their public image and the views on China's communist regime have plummeted in the last 12 months, but I don't think China cares about that. As long as they've got governments who are submissive to them.
But the key is, though, is that, you know, you cannot be a superpower and be hated. And that's what they want to do. They've spent tens of billions, probably trillions of dollars over the years on their United Workfront program. That is to suborn politicians, you know, spread soft power, spread soft influence, spread positive feelings about China. It's a disaster for them. It's not working, and it is because they come ultimately from a position of weakness. And my own belief is that Australia needs to keep pushing back very hard, and I think Scott Morrison has done, to his credit, quite well on doing that, and I don't know that a Labor government would do the same, and I don't know what's going to happen under a Biden regime, you know, when he's getting 10% for the big guy, but, you know, you need to push back on these guys because eventually that whole regime in China, there's going to have to be change there because internally, too, all of these things where they're saying, well, you can't have Australian beef, you can't have Australian wine, we are not able to take the coal and so on. That hurts their economy, that hurts their middle classes as well, and that creates internal political pressures, which we don't know about.
Well, then those pressures would be enormous. And, for example, we know that Xi Jinping, you know, managed to have himself set up as a president for life. But I imagine there's an awful lot within the Politburo and elsewhere who are extremely unhappy with his leadership because they had it sweet only 12 months ago. We learnt, for example, yesterday that Boris Johnson has put $16 billion into new military forces, which will include ships to join in Australian and American operations in the South China Sea at some point, possibly next year or whenever. So already people are arcing up against China. And as you rightly say, James, they've overreached. They've gone in. They are now in a position of weakness because they've lost that superiority that they had before, and now they're floundering. And I think you're right that this is a sign of their floundering.